I was ordained as a minister in 1986, and since that time I have performed many, many wedding ceremonies. I have done large, elaborate weddings in churches with multiple attendants and very nervous and pushy mothers of brides. I have done weddings of couples that had no money at all, weddings at which the bride got her gown from Goodwill and their friends gave them a potluck for their reception. I have done weddings at wineries when the guests started drinking 2 hours before the ceremony. I have done quiet weddings in homes, noisy weddings in hotels, and I did one wedding in the midst of the biggest ice storm ever to hit Portland. I have had children participate, I've honored the dead in wedding ceremonies, and I once had a request to include a dog, which I declined, citing our policy that no animals are allowed in the Salmon Street Sanctuary, a policy which I confess I created on the spot. At the time of this request. Most of these marriages took, and a few didn't, but we know that in our society at large that marriage is in trouble, for around 50% of them will one day end in divorce. People, in fact, divorce and remarry 3, 4, and 5 times. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I myself am a divorced woman, have been for 30 years. And people are increasingly living together and even having children outside the bonds of marriage. Sociologists, culture watchers have been asking for some time now, is marriage obsolete? Has it always been problematic? In fact, this promise that two people make to love only this one other till death do us part, that is a very long time these days. Is it a natural thing to do to make such a promise? Well, perhaps we should look first at the animal kingdom and see what might be instructive there. Let me tell you about the green-crested parrot. Scientists were amazed at the loyalty of the male green-crested parrot, who was so fiercely committed to his partner and his young that he would fly over vast distances, capture food, masticate it, and place the prepared food in the mouths of the hungry chicks. They were so struck by this behavior that they decided to rent a helicopter and follow the parrot wherever he went to see just how far he would rove to get food for his little family. And they were astonished to find that this bird flew over an area of 40 miles gathering food. They were equally surprised to discover that he had 4 additional nesting females that he was that he was serving in that 40-mile area. Well, wouldn't you know it? In fact, in almost all species, faithfulness is a fantasy. Even in the oldest profession, that which figured so prominently in Eliot Spitzer's Fall, this is practiced by some animals. For example, researchers report in the journal Animal Behavior that great gray shrikes, elegant raptor-like birds with silver capes, these birds form pair bonds to breed, as do 90% of bird species. A male shrike provides his mate with nuptial gifts, so to speak, rodents, lizards, small birds, and insects, which he impales on sticks. But when he desires a would-be mistress shrike, he offers her an even bigger kebab than the ones he gives to his mate. And the richer the offering, the researchers found, the greater the chance that the female will agree to a fling. Well, we can be comforted by knowing that there are dimensions of human experience that are missing in the animal world, at least when it comes to sex and mating. One of these would be emotional bonding, and the other would be the spiritual dimension. Now, let's talk about the emotional bonding. Why is it that a female astronaut would drive all the way across the country, nonstop, to confront her rival in love? Why is it that sometimes people actually kill a spouse who has been unfaithful or kill the rival? Think the diet doctor. I think that it works like this. The love bond, with its sexual dimension, recapitulates the earliest bonding experience that a child has, that is, with its mother. Our flesh holds that early memory of being safe in the arms of another, rocked and held and loved. And because in this primary experience, the child is dependent on the mother literally for survival, those same psychological mechanisms kick in when we bond in love as an adult. And so when our spouse strays, we may feel that our very life is endangered. When the Spitzer affair broke, one New York Times reporter who looked into this phenomenon wrote that, and I quote, "Married people all over the world are devastated to discover that their partners have been, as the Dutch say, pinching the cat in the dark." French wives were shocked when this reporter suggested that it was their custom to overlook infidelity. In America, standards for marriage are particularly high, and so when Americans describe their response to infidelity, they don't just say they were shocked or jealous, but they say something like their whole view of the world has collapsed. "It robs you of your past," one husband said. "What is real? What is fake?" So back to our original question, is marriage obsolete? Is committed relationship obsolete? I think that we have to conclude that it most assuredly is not. People have been joining together in intimate relationship, making the most profound of promises for thousands of years in virtually all cultures. And when those promises are broken, the results are devastating. Divorce is devastating. Some people think divorce is done easily, casually in this country. In my experience, it never is done easily. It is always extremely painful. It's devastating. Yes, marriage is in crisis because the old foundations have cracked and will not hold. Traditional forms of marriage are pretty much dead. Now we have to create new foundations for human relationship. The crisis of marriage is a crisis of relationship. So I do not believe that marriage is obsolete. The question for us today is, how do we choose well in contemporary marriage? What are the relationships to be today? And how do we keep this marriage intact?